Good evening. This is Gene Symes, Operation Fine for Effect, right here in New York, where, hey, the weather is still shy from being even spring. It's snowing here. But we're going to be talking to Barbara Wright. She's in Oregon, and it's about missing records and classified records that we can't find out really the story of Joe Dunnigan that served in during the Korean War and special operations, trying to reach a point where her benefits can be well received and understand that she deserves this. But we can't do anything without somebody identifying Joe that might be looking in his unit, recognize Joe Dunnigan that served. If you do, the name of the special ops was with a group called the Ghost Walkers. I know it sounds a little strange, but operations have different names at times, and that was one that was named the Ghost Walkers. So if anybody knows, you can please reach out to Barbara Wright at 541-276-9 276-2082. There we go. If I have it wrong, Barbara will correct me. Sometimes I get the numbers wrong. But anyways, here's Barbara. Barbara Wright, how you doing?
Doing fine, Gene. I am the widow of Spec Ops vet Joseph Wayne Dunnigan. Joe served in Korea between approximately May 3, 1962 and approximately the 6th of March, 1964. The reason he was sent home in 1964 is because he was too well known by the North Koreans and they had a $1,500 US bounty on his head.
Now, could you tell the folks one more time how they can contact you before we get to the true knit of the story?
You can contact me at area code 541-276-2082.
Is there any?
By email at msb.wright@gmail.com.
Okay, we'll be sending that message out one more time before we end the program here. So Barbara, you can take the picture down a little bit and let's find out a little bit what you've been trying to do to be successful in finding out where those records are or how to get those records or people that might know Joe.
Well, I'll start out. The story starts a little previous to Korea because in November of 1961, he was called up to serve with the 32nd Red Arrow, Wisconsin National Guard as a fill-in because the Wisconsin National Guard had been sent to Fort Lewis to replace the 4th Division when they went to Germany with the Berlin Wall crisis. Well, Joe had to report by the 11th of December, and he reported on the 10th. He was there about 45 days when he got called in to the old man's office, and he said, the old man told him he had one too many days that year on active duty service. The truth of the matter, from what we can figure out, was the Army was seeing if Joe could do what they wanted done. And when he could do what they wanted done, all of a sudden they didn't need him anymore because they had something else for him to do. He got sent home on the 20th of February, 1962, with an honorable discharge. According to Lieutenant Clark, who signed the discharge, was odd because they can always fudge one day so that they can keep you if they need to, but they didn't. On the 12th of March 1962, he got a letter in the mail that said he was on standby, and within 5 days, he gets another letter in the mail from Fort Lewis offering him a 2-year tour on active duty with a bus ticket and meal vouchers. So he talked over with his dad, And his dad said, well, go up and take a, listen to what they got to say. If it looks good, take it. So approximately the 15th of March 1962, Joe couldn't remember exactly the date, but he said it was 2 weeks before his birthday, and his birthday was the 31st of March. So he was at Fort Lewis before his birthday, and they offered him this 2-week tour on active duty. Well, he said, I've reserved commitments that I need to fulfill before I can do that. And they said, we'll take care of that. They made a phone call, got him out of his reserve duties. And the next thing Joe knew, he and a whole bunch of other guys were doing a little PT every morning for about 2 weeks. And on or about the 1st of April, Joe and approximately 50 other gentlemen were put aboard an aircraft and shipped to Alaska to cold weather and mountain school. They were up there for about 30 days. When they were brought home, they were given clothes to wear on the tarmac. When they came home, they had to give their cold weather gear up. And I have a picture of those gentlemen that the VA swears to God is his boot camp picture, and there's no physical way that any boot camp officer would allow his men to look as sloppy as some of those guys do. But anyway, the picture was taken in the afternoon of May the 2nd. By 1:30 in the morning on May the 3rd, they were ousted out of bed, told to fold up their gear and go aboard a bus. And they went to McCord Air Force Base, where they were loaded on C-123s. They were given a manila envelope and told not to open it until they landed in Hawaii. Approximately 4 hours later, they landed in Hawaii, taxied up to a hangar that had a portable mess in it. It had a portable PX in it and some cots. They said, if you've got smokes, you can smoke them. Or if you need to, you can go to the PX and you can get smokes or chocolate. And there was a mess set up with everything you'd want to eat for breakfast. They serviced the plane, and about 4 hours, they put the guys back on the plane after they'd opened their envelopes and it said Korea. And within about 4 hours, they were in Korea. From approximately the 3rd of May until he was called in because his father passed away on the 21st of June, he was an observer on the DMZ. And somewhere between the 1st and 15th of June, there was a Navy bomber that had been retrofit with spray equipment that was spraying the DMZ, and he helped save the pilot and crew's life because the North Koreans were trying to shoot it down. He was called into the old man's office on the 20th of June 1962 and told that his father had passed away very suddenly in the middle of traffic in Portland, and he was being shipped home to help his mother prepare for the funeral. They gave him a chaplain's fund of $1,500, he said, and flew him from Korea to Japan, from Japan to Alaska, and from Alaska, they put him aboard a second seat on an F-14 that was going to Texas. It could land at the Pendleton Airport, so it landed at the Pendleton Airport, dropped him off, and took off, and away it went. And for the next 30 days, Joe was either in Pendleton arranging for his father's funeral or with his mother in Bend. On the 20th of July 1962, Joe went back to Fort Lewis and caught a hop to Korea. He reported back to ASCOM Depot in Korea and was politely told that his unit was too far advanced for him now, and they shipped him off to the unit that was being formed by a gentleman whose nickname was Injun. Jack Cosling was the great-grandson of Geronimo, and he was forming a unit to counter the North Korean incursions that were causing problems. Apparently during the time Joe was home for his father's funeral, North Koreans had come down and blown up one of our ammunition dumps and kind of made a mess around ASCOM Depot. So that's why this Spec Ops group was formed. And for the ensuing 18 months, Injun ran the unit. He and Joe was his number one guy, because my late husband was Eastern Cherokee, and Injun was Navajo, Chiricahua, Apache, and they got along famously together. Nothing that Joe did in Korea can be proven because there's no records. I proved he'd gone to Korea by doing a trick that I learned in my journalism class. I took journalism in college, and my journalism professor said, if you are interviewing somebody and they don't seem to be able to remember things, ask them what, when, around a specific holiday. So when I was asking Joe about, when did you go to Korea? Was it before or after Mother's Day? He said it was before. I said 2-3 days or a week? He said, oh, about 3 days. So I get the perpetual calendar out, and that told me what I needed to know. When I asked him some other dates, that again, I said, how close to Thanksgiving? When he was telling me about the ambush at OP Susan, the 1/9 1st Cav got ambushed. One of their guys got killed, Spec 5 Johnston, Olivo got wounded. He said it was 2 days before Thanksgiving. So again, the perpetual calendar told me it was November the 20th. I knew all about it because Joe had told me everything that he knew, and he knew that it had happened at daybreak. He knew that when they were called, they were getting ready to go back to camp, and they were called in to go find the perpetrators because 8th Army was just sure if the 1/9 did it, that there'd be more casualties. So the guys were brought in by Jeep or by transport. They went into one of the tents there at the 1/9, and as one of the gentlemen who saw this group said, they'd scare the shit out of you when they came out of the tent with their war paint on. It wasn't Army regulation per se, but between Injun Marine variety, a little bit of Apache Navajo variety, an 8th Army approved variety, it was pretty scary. They were called, and so they went out and they sent one of their scouts out to see if he could find where the perpetrators were. He did. He reported back. So they dog-trotted, found them, took care of the issue. Well, a couple of the 1/9 guys came because they just had to come. They just had to come help. And Joe said they sat out there for about 4 hours doing nothing more than shooting the bull, telling dirty stories. Occasionally they'd shoot rifle off or whatever. So knowing this, I posted in the National VFW magazine looking for information about an ambush that happened in Korea on the 20th of November, 1962. If you weren't there, you wouldn't know diddly squat about it. Trust me, because it wasn't in the papers in the United States, or I would have known about it. And I did, because I had to read the paper to my grandmother because she couldn't see well enough with cataracts to read. And don't ever remember reading anything about it until Joe and I got together and we started this odyssey in 2001. And within 24 hours of that magazine coming out in 2006, I had 2 responses. One was a gentleman out of Texas, Eric Strunsick. He knew all about the ambush. He knew all about the guys coming in and getting, going out to find them. He was a supply sergeant out of ASCOM, but he was bored. So he hopped a transport up to the OP and he got there just after they'd been hit. Johnston's body was underneath the yellow tarp and Olivo was being airlifted out to the field station and on to Japan. And then about 3 hours after Eric called, get a call from Defiance, Ohio. Howard Vogelsong. Yep, I know all about that. I was there. I saw it happen. I said,
Barbara,
"Well,
let me interrupt you for a second here. I'm kind of interested. Is there a name to that supply veteran or person that you was talking about?
Eric Strunsick.
What's his name?
Strunsick. I think that's his last name.
Okay. And all this that you're saying, did you contact any representatives to put your puzzle together?
Yes, I've talked to my senators, both of them. Ron Wyden sits on the Senate Intelligence Committee and they're stonewalling Ron. They stonewalled Gordon Smith when Gordon asked. They stonewalled Jeff Merkley when Jeff Merkley asked. They stonewalled Greg Walden when his man asked. They stonewalled Noel Hike when Noel asked. And they stonewalled Ken Carpenter when Ken asked. Ken is an attorney out of Kansas. And Ken said, I know Joe was in Korea. I just can't prove it.
How many times have you been to Washington with Operation Find for Effect on this issue?
The first time was in 2006. The last time was in 2014. I think I've been with you in Washington, D.C. 4 times.
And still trying to get this book open, it's been a nightmare, correct?
You got that exactly correct, Gene. Records for that era of Korea are virtually non-existent.
Mm-hmm. So another thing is that your story is great, but there's a part here that Joe is no longer with us.
Yes.
You have been his caretaker for how long?
We lived together for 14 3/4 years, and we were married for a month and 3 days when he passed away of cancer.
Does the state of Oregon recognize this as what is it when you're living together and you're pronounced common law?
Well, that's an interesting story, because if you ask specifically about common law, they'll say no. But in a Oregon Supreme Court case in 1972, Beal versus Beal, Mr. Beal paid $500 of the $2,000 down payment on their house and made the payments for the ensuing 20 years. Mrs. Beal, had been divorced. Mrs. Beal paid $1,500. Eventually, she wanted her $1,500 and he said no. And the Supreme Court said, no, you bought the house as though you were a couple. Therefore, you are a couple. Pay the woman. So in that case, yes, I believe that this Oregon has to recognize common law. And Joe's doctors will tell you that if he was in for a doctor's appointment, I was with him and I was asking questions all the time. And if there was an issue, I was the one that was on the horn to the doctor saying, hey, I think we have a problem.
Does the Department of Veterans Affairs recognize this common law?
The Department of Veterans Affairs says that, no, we weren't married 9 months, so I'm not entitled to anything. But again, Lamar versus Peak, Mr. and Mrs. Lamar were married 9 days. He was 100% total and permanent. He died. They told her that. She took it to court, and the judge remanded it back to the VA for settlement.
Mhm.
So I'm entitled to what I'm fighting for.
So at this point right here, your paperwork has it been clearly noted that you have filed for this benefits?
Yes. As a matter of fact, I filed the first time in April of 2018. And I found out about 3 weeks ago that the claim had been closed because I failed to send back some paperwork that they supposedly sent me in August of 2019. Unfortunately, I never received the paperwork to sign and send back to them. And so they closed the claim in September of 2019. So I recently had to send to the state of Oregon for what Oregon says is a long form copy of a death certificate, which shows what killed Joe. But because what I got from the mortuary at the time of his death was what they call a short form. It doesn't mention cause of death. Well, when they asked for cause of death, I contacted Jeff Merkley's office, and Joel Corcoran in Jeff's office said, if it didn't say what killed him on there, get a copy of the medical records from the hospital. That'll suffice. Well, I'm here to tell you, Gene, that didn't suffice. And supposedly I didn't sign the form 20-0995. I never got it back to sign, so how could I sign it? Well, I found out 3 weeks ago, while we were discussing what was going on with that claim, that somebody else's social security number was attached to the claim. Now, I have no idea who the other individual was. The VA has not been benevolent enough to inform me of who that individual is, but they requested a copy of my social security card to prove that I was indeed who I said I was. And I fired that off to them. And when I called them today, because I got a copy of the C file, and indeed the right social security number was on the file all along. So I called to find out what was going on. And they had not corrected the computer yet. And they finally did it today.
So your social security number has been cleared now, that it's the
Yes.
right one.
Yes.
Okay, so can we say that at this point here, would your representative put an effort to do a little bit more after finding out that the VA made a mistake?
I don't know yet. I've got to make a phone call and
Okay.
talk with his vet rep Wednesday when I get 5 minutes and find out if there's anything that more they can do. But when Joel and I talked the last time, Joel had seen the response I got back from the CIA when I drafted a FOIA, and he said, I know they have records on Joe, but we can't do anymore. You need to find an attorney. And that's what I'm in the process of doing now, is looking for an attorney that will take this and take it to court. Because, Gene, if they've done it to me, they've done it to every other spec ops widow out there. And go.
Well, your fight is for Joe Dunnigan's to clarify that you deserve the benefit and also get his papers that he was in the service. But your fight is for every wife, every individual that has had a husband or a wife that was in special operations, which those things happen, to make something happen. Your fight is a big one. Your fight and includes hundreds and hundreds of people across the nation. Could you please verify again your phone number, contact, and your email address? Let's do it again so anybody listening towards the end of this video, as we're going to right now, can contact you.
My phone number is area code 541 276-2082. My email address is msbawright@gmail.com.
Would you do me another favor? All these individuals that has caught wind of what you're trying to do to find out, and they assist you, can you name some of these individuals and give them a little bit of credit of what they've done? Maybe somebody might hear this name and might contact them.
When Paul Dion, who is another Spec Ops vet, he's retired Air Force. He was the one that clued me in that ghost walkers are currently in Afghanistan. Paul's a retired paralegal, and he's also been one of the ones that has encouraged me to find legal counsel, because he said what they're doing is wrong, because the VA has it in their regulations. CFR 3.102, when in lieu of official documentation, believe the word of the vet. That's the first line of that. And that was put into existence because the Department of the Army has a bad habit of losing records. And when you guys were in Vietnam, rather than go back to Congress and ask for more money to run the war on, they used the money that had been appropriated for records retention to run the war on, and worried about records later. And when guys like yourself came home and they needed benefits, there was no record. So the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee forced the VA into coming up with some regulations to deal with it. And CFR 3.102 and CFR 3.304 were the reason why, are the results of what they were required to do.
Who was
So-
Ed Crosby?
Ed was a retired Spec Ops vet also. He was, as a matter of fact, Air America, which is a CIA ran operation. And Brother Ed was the one that was dinking around on the computer one night and went on to Pacer and found Beale versus Beale, and said to me, did you do things together? And I said, yes. And I deposited money from at least one of my jobs in Joe's checking account. Ed says, that's all that's necessary. You acted as a couple. And Gary Kendall, who's also a retired or former Air Force vet, who's been active in the fight for records and benefits.
Last one, I want to know, who is Chauncey?
Chauncey Robinson is an Army vet who lives in Baltimore, Maryland. Chauncey came from your neck of the woods to Baltimore because he has a claim pending with the Department of Veterans Affairs for back benefits for deprivation of civil rights, deprivation of human rights, and for obfuscation of official documentation. And Chauncey's an expert researcher, and Chauncey was the one that turned me on to the fact that it's illegal for any government agency to dispose of official government documentation. And he's also the one that clued me into USC 5103, which says that all government agencies are supposed to share records. Well,
Last one I want to ask you, the lady from North Carolina, make it a little short because we're just about time running out. But I find this interesting with the individual that you found out from North Carolina, and you have actual documentary that you can say that this act of your Social Security number was compensated by the VA by making their
Well,
mistake?
Chauncey told me today that he knew of a woman out of North Carolina, a widow out of North Carolina, who it turns out the VA had given her social security number to someone else. She didn't find out about it until they came, this woman came and tried to sell her house. And that's when she discovered that they had given this woman her social security number and had, this woman was obviously not entitled to any such benefits.
So the conclusion of this here is that we're trying to find out the service records for Joe Dunnigan, classified. Also, the issue of your social security number so you can obtain the benefits you deserve. And also the common law that Oregon or the state of Oregon actually has recognized at one point or the other. Those are very important. Let me ask you, how long have you been with Operation Find for Effect?
I came on board in December of 2005 when you were headed to Washington, D.C. and had a meeting with Congress. We helped you organize the Veterans March that we had to the north face of the Capitol in 2006. Joe acted as head of perimeter security, and he appointed 3 veterans to run his security detail that came. And from there, it's been you, Jerry Berry, Simon, Calvin, and various others that have been together through thick and thin. You have been a lifeline for me, Gene.
Well, I can say, I appreciate that, but the gratitude that I can see is the individuals that has been giving you some really close information, like Paul and others like Paul.
Simon
You can't find better individual that knows his stuff, okay? Let me tell you.
And Simon's the same. Simon was the one that
That's right.
sent me
And
Lamar
Simon.
versus Peak. And Simon Alvarado, he always says, I need an excuse to put out the do not disturb sign on my office door. And when I called him and asked about that, he said, yes. Gene, do you realize that Joe was diagnosed with cancer on the 30th of January, 2018 and died on the 3rd of March, 2018?
Wow.
33 days.
Look, Barbara, we're going to have to wrap this up, but I think we put a lot of information out there. Hopefully that somebody's going to listen. Somebody's going to recognize the name of the Ghost Walkers, and the story that you gave identified that it's true. And all these other individuals you identified with your story. Is there anything that you like to really direct to the representative straight at them on this issue before we wrap it up?
Yes. The VA has the rule in place that says if the records can't be found, the benefit of the doubt goes to the vet. I'm saying to Congress, okay, the rule's there. It's your responsibility to go to the Department of Veterans Affairs when you have a situation like this and tell them, grant the claim and get it over. But with these people, the way it is now, either there's a rule that they can't go, or they go and the VA doesn't listen, and then there's a problem. But the way it stands now, nobody really has the power to push.
What would you say to the new secretary, real quick, like?
Mr. McDonough? if you really want to make a hit with the vets community, tell the bean counters upstairs to shut up and tell the regional office in Juneville, Wisconsin, if you've got a spec ops claim and you can't come up with a ream of documentation, grant the claim anyway and get the vet paid. You guys did stuff that would curl your hair my hair permanently. And for that, you deserve the compensation you're seeking. It isn't like this was a Sunday school picnic and it was fried chicken and potato salad. No, it was 40 below zero and K rations or C rations or no rations or cold food.
There you go. Okay, look, this has been Operation Fine for Effect with Barbara Wright from Oregon, 541-276-2082. That's her number. Call it. You have any answers to her questions, any curiosity issues that you might have that you want to try and see if you can clarify and maybe help, please call her. 541-276-2082. Operation Fine for Effect. Thank you so much, Barbara.